Well, in my last eWaste Wednesday video, I made a mistake about the Apple IIe and that I didn't realize it had a joystick port on the back. And so I used the one that was on the motherboard, and you guys had to let me know that I was ignorant about that, I guess, or just didn't realize that the Apple IIe had one built onto the back. Well, in this video, I'm going to try to redeem myself by giving you a treat. Not that I'm going to pretend that I know everything about it, but I think you're going to enjoy taking a look at this Apple II Plus. I found at eWaste. It's chock full of goodies and drives I've never heard of. So let's take a look at it right now on Retro Hack Shack After Hours. Well, hey, Shack hackers out there, everybody, thanks for tuning in once again to one of my eWaste Wednesday videos. That's right. It's Wednesday. It's the day that I go to eWaste and I find all kinds of cool stuff, and I bring it back and share what I find with all of you. And thanks also to all of my patrons who help support the channel, especially while I am convalescing, I guess, as you might say, with my problems I'm having with my eye. So frustrating. But yeah, while I'm stuck at home, out of work and out of pay, you guys are actually helping to supplement that just a little bit. So thanks to all my patrons. Well, this is what I found at eWaste this past week. It is this Apple II Plus. And there's kind of a little story that goes along with this, in that there is a bunch of different workers that work at eWaste, and one of them or two of them that work there kind of know to look out for older equipment like this. And I hate to say it, I don't want to sound ageist, but some of the younger folk that work there only know what they're told to do, which is to put electronic stuff in one pile, hazardous stuff in another pile, sheet metal and cables in another pile, and they just kind of follow those rules, but they have no idea that this Apple II Plus, for example, is sought after not only by me, but a lot of people around the world would love to have an Apple II Plus to relive their childhood. And this one in particular had a lot of interesting cards. I think you can see them poking through the middle. So today's going to be a little bit of vintage computing archaeology as well. But anyway, one of the folks that works there, Richard, he spotted this as they were literally throwing it in the dumpster. And he was able to dig out all of the components except for the case. This does not have the case, but I think I have a way to solve that as well. And I'll show you that by the end of the episode by going to yet another eWaste place. And there'll be some really cool pictures you want to see, especially if you like Apple II gear. You won't want to miss that. But anyway, he was able to save this for me and all the cards and everything. I didn't have time to go through them all to see what they all were. Some of them I didn't even recognize, but let's go ahead and go through this Apple II Plus. Whoop, there's a message for me. That must mean it's time to get on with the show, so to speak. So let's take a look. So we're literally going to have to dig in here. The first thing I see is an Apple II Disk II floppy drive, and yeah, nothing really to say about this one. It doesn't have the number sticker. A lot of times there'd be drive 1 or drive 2 on here, but it does have the Apple sticker, and we'll have to see if this works. It also has the rainbow cable here, which was, I believe, more common on the earlier drives. The later ones had a gray cable that was a little bit wider here in the middle of the cable to go with this. So yeah, we'll have to see if that works, but nothing too spectacular there. Nothing out of the ordinary, at least. However, with the other drive, again, last time I had that Apple II on the channel, it had drives that I hadn't ever heard of. And again, we're back again with another drive I haven't heard of. It's called the Quentin. I can't really read the font. It looks like to me like Q-U-E-N-T or R-I-N. And let's see if we can read the back any easier. Nope, really can't read it. But yeah, there it is, Quentin or Quenrin, and it's a model number AP100, and it's got a serial number as well, and that's about it. It looks to share the exact same style case as this one, but this one does not have the fake air vents here that Apple covered over with black tape. So a little bit different, I guess, but I don't know if this was just a regular floppy drive or something in particular that was a little bit different, maybe higher capacity. I'll have to do a little research and see if I can figure out what's going on with this. Now, before I start digging into all of these cards that you can see jumbled up in here, I've just got to say, just by taking a look at it, I'm not sure I know what all these cards are, but I can tell by how many there are and the types of things in here. This was somebody's baby. There's no doubt about it. You don't buy a computer like this and fill it full of expensive cards unless you are really into this hobby. So yeah, let's go through these cards and we'll see if we can find some interesting things. I know we will just by taking a look at the top here. First thing I want to pull out is right over here on the power supply. And this is a development board for the Apple II. So again, you know that whoever had this really loved it because they were into it enough that they wanted to start messing around and maybe testing things out, making their own boards, etc. So this is a blank development board, and you would have been able to interface with the bus through this and put in all kinds of different chips and whatever and do some prototyping and maybe come up with your own card to sell in the future, just like we would today with prototyping PCBs. And oh, what a wonderful unplanned segue this is to thank our sponsor for today, PCBWay. You know, I've been talking about PCBWay for many years here on the channel. They've been a great sponsor to work with, and that's because they provide quality, low-cost prototype PCBs that you can use in your everyday projects. Not only that, but they provide assembly, they provide 3D printing, they provide CNC milling, and more. PCBWay is also going to be at JPCA 2025, which happens this week coming up, the 4th through the 6th of June in Tokyo. So if you happen to be in Tokyo or Japan and can stop by the show and tell them that Retro Hack Shack sent you their way, I would appreciate it, and I know they would love to see you there. Thanks to PCBWay for their support of the Retro Hack Shack. All right, now it's going to be difficult for me to make any statements about how rare any of these cards are, so if you know, leave that in the comments below. But first up, we have this card called OmniGraph by MA Systems, and it's kind of obvious what this is. I mean, at first it looks like it may be a floppy disk controller card or something because of this cable that's coming out of, and the placement of this header over here. But actually, if you look at how long this particular cable is, and the fact that it has a Centronics connector on the back, this has to be a parallel printer card. And it also has some dip switches over here. So I actually went ahead and looked this up online, and I did find the manual for this particular card. And the manual is rather nondescript, but it does give settings for those dip switches we saw for various printers. So we know what kind of circa of printer this thing would connect to. It would connect to several different Okidata printers, a TransStar printer, an NEC printer, 8023, and an Epson series or Star Gemini series printer. And yeah, it goes through giving instructions on how to get this set up and changing those dip switches and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's a parallel printer card. So if I ever run into one of these printers and need a card to get it set up with an Apple II, this one might be a fun one to test. All right, next up, we have an official Apple ROM card. It says right down there in the corner. Don't know if you can see it. This is an official Apple ROM card, and I'm assuming the way this works is you would put your ROMs in here, either upgraded ROMs or something like that, and then you've got this switch, and you could switch between the ROMs that were actually in the Apple II or the ROMs that were here just by clicking this switch. That way, if you had a special set of ROMs that you wanted to run or an upgrade, but you wanted to be able to go back and use the original ROMs because maybe some software that you had only ran with the original ROMs or vice versa, you could use this card and switch back and forth. Now, I did look up the part numbers on these chips, and I believe these were the original ROMs that went with the Apple II Plus. I think it's 3410001 through 4. And then there's another one down here. I'm not sure why this is missing. Maybe someone snagged this as a replacement somewhere down the line. Don't know if it's needed or not. But yeah, so we've got a ROM card and we've got what I believe are the original ROMs, which makes me think that whatever ROMs are maybe in this now in the motherboard are upgraded somehow. So they might be some sort of special or upgraded set of ROMs. And when we actually get this thing cleaned out and get all the cards out and take it for a test drive, maybe we'll see that there is some sort of special ROMs inserted in the motherboard itself. And just a quick editing note here, I was able to take a picture of the ROMs that were in the actual machine, and they appear to be the upgraded AppleSoft Basic ROMs, which would have been the improved Basic, I guess, that a lot of people would have wanted to install in their systems to get those additional Basic features. So this would allow you to switch from the regular Basic to the AppleSoft Basic, just with the throw of a switch. All right, we have yet another printer card. This one is another parallel printer card from Epson. It says right down here on the board. And there is, up here, it just says Apple board. And the ROM that's in it just says Apple, so APL. So I'm assuming that APL is Apple, and this is a board that was specifically designed to work, from Epson, was specifically designed to work with their printers. So that's kind of cool. Unfortunately, I noticed down here on the card edge connector that this thing has had some damage. So it's broken clean off here on the edge, almost at a 45-degree angle. And unfortunately, there's not a good way to fix this. I'm not sure how rare this particular card is. It certainly could be reverse engineered and rebuilt. It's a very simple card. And if this ROM isn't backed up to archive.org, we can back up this ROM, read it in, back it up, and you could theoretically recreate this card if there weren't any others in existence. However, this one, again, is going to be difficult to test, not because I don't have a printer, which I don't think I do, but because it's physically broken. So that is a shame. All right, next up, we have a bog standard Disk 2 controller card for the floppy drives. No surprise here, nothing out of the ordinary. It looks to be in good shape. So that's about all there is to say about that one. All right, we're still going, and there's still cards left in this machine just laying around in there. This is a ViewMax 80 from Micromax, 1982, I think that says down there. So yeah, this is an 80 column card. So that is really cool to see. And the nice thing about this one, the ones I've seen in the past have a little pin header up here that you have to connect a cable to in order to get the thing to work, basically. This one comes with the cables already on here and tied down with zip ties. And there's two cables here. One is for the video signal coming out of the Apple II itself, and then the other one, whoops, I got these backwards. This one's for the video signal coming out of the Apple II, the composite signal, and then this one will output the 80 columns mode. At least that's what I'm assuming. So yeah, that is pretty nice. I don't know. We'll have to see if we can test this out. I think I should be able to at least see if it's working or not, because it appears to be intact and in good shape. Now, I did find the manual for this. I can put that up on the screen here, some of the sections. It's just so funny how they wrote manuals back then. I mean, everything was very basic because people didn't know what this stuff was, but they were also very, I don't know what the right word is, effusive? Is that the right word? I have no idea. But it says here in the manual, for example, the ViewMax 80 was designed for the professional Apple II user, and we at Micromax feel it will satisfy his or her most discriminating needs. I mean, it's just funny. Like, can you imagine putting that in a manual today? Like, people would be like laughing, like, what in the world is going on? And then it goes on to say in the next chapter, which is installation, it says, at every step in the design of the ViewMaster 80, the user was kept in mind. This includes the ease of installation, pulling of motherboard chips, extra boards and wires were not considered a benefit, so they were left out. So it's just funny. Like, it just seems so old school, the way that they talk about this stuff. But the user manual has some good information for it that we will need if we're going to test out that board. All right, next up, there's still more cards coming. This is I thought it said Spade at first, but then when I got in a little closer with my camera, it looks like it says right up here, I'm not sure you can see that, SPAOE. I'm not sure if that's a whole word that you pronounce or if that's just the SPAOE Z80 card. This is Z80 up there. It says Z80 down there. So I think we know what this is. It's a Z80 card or a CPM card. So this card would have been able to run CPM programs, very popular add-on for the Apple II back in the day, so that you can take advantage of those CPM programs that you may have had laying around for other systems, or just because CP/M was actually really popular before MS-DOS became popular. You know, CP/M systems were the way to go, especially if you were a business user or you wanted a professional writing program, you would run those on CP/M. And so this card could enable you to do that. I could not find a manual for it, but maybe we can test this out and just see if there's some way to get it up and running. I see there's some dip switches here. Without the manual, it's going to be hard to know what those are set for or what they do. But, you know, we could potentially try these cards one at a time and see if they're able to work or not. So we'll have to see. All right, last but not least, this was the only card that was still plugged in. I don't want to really take it out because if you know that this card plugged into this memory socket here is, of course, the language card, which had an expansion, a memory expansion. I forget how much it was, maybe 64K. You guys can correct me if I got that wrong. But yeah, it was basically a memory expansion, and you would plug one chip or the socket here into one of the memory sockets, the first one here, and that would let you expand your memory. So yeah, this was also very, very common with Apple II. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'll probably just leave it out for now until we go ahead and get this powered up with no cards or anything in it at all and make sure that it's working. And then I'll go ahead and plug this back in because it is nice to have. All right, hiding down in the corner there, you may have saw it. Okay, hiding down in the corner there, you may have seen it down there in the left. I don't know if it was visible on camera, but it is this Solitron Devices semiconductor products case here. And this was just hiding out in there. I don't know if these are old chips that were removed or what, but there's some writing here. Here we go, DOS 3.2.1 ROMs. So now we know a little bit about what's in here. And I don't think these are actually what's in this though. Let's see if there's actually any chips in here. I don't think so. Nope, just a little bit of, oh no, there's one chip there. Yeah. A couple of chips and some instructions that somebody made for this card. It looks like there's a few part numbers here for PGA and P5A, it looks like. Maybe that's P6A. And these were on some card. I don't know if this is the, it looks like PG, PS. Yeah, I don't know what card this is. Maybe we can figure that out. But there's some detailed instructions here. Again, this was a very beloved system by somebody. And, you know, they kept their instructions and everything and put everything away nice and neat and kept this in the case so they could find it easily. Let's see what else is inside here. It looks like there's a lot of stickers. It looks like there's some double stick tape in here, but it does look like there's at least one chip left over that they had replaced or whatever. And this is the character generator. It says CharGen Laser, and it's got a part number there, but my phone is not cooperating right now. I think because of the tinfoil that's going in and out. This is the AM92188PC, an AMD product, and this is a character generator. Very interesting. All right, got to go handheld because we're not done yet. There's more mods inside the case, and this one I believe says it's the Super Mod 2. Looks like some sort of video mod. It's on some sort of a PCB that's kind of mounted back there that we can see, and then it kind of runs over to the video output, and it looks like it needs some power here. And that power is not plugged in. So yeah, whatever this thing is, it was used and then not used. It's got a couple of different outputs on it. It looks like there's a RCA jack over here and an RCA jack here. So I'm guessing maybe, without looking this thing up and know anything about it, that this was an RF modulator perhaps that would output to a normal TV, and they just mounted it. Maybe they built this project themselves, it looks like they did, and then mounted it inside the case here, and then maybe ran another cable from the RF modulator out of the case to hook up to a TV. So that is pretty darn cool. And then I also just noticed it looks like we have some sort of a mod underneath the keyboard. So I think I'm going to have to take this thing apart and see if that is something special as well. All right, well, here's that other mod I was talking about underneath the keyboard. And this says, so you're not going to be able to see it. Let me see if I can show you back here. It says laser. Sorry, that's upside down, but it says laser there. And it has 1980 and a revision number. And then it has this ROM here, which has font's name on it. I took a picture. I think it says, the bottom one definitely says Roman, and the top one, I'm not sure if it says Kenny or Kenji or something like that. But yeah, this is a special font board for the Apple II. I also want to just recall that chip we saw earlier, which said laser, charge-in laser on it. That probably goes in this socket right here, or would have originally, but it looks like whoever owned this did some further mods to this system and took that chip out. The only thing that bothers me about this board is that it has this wire here, which is broken off. So this is some sort of a bodge or something, and I'm not sure what that goes to. So I'm going to go ahead and look up and see if I can find the information on this laser font board and see where this wire goes, if anywhere, and see if I can get that hooked up before we give this thing a try. And if it doesn't boot or whatever, we'll definitely be taking this out. But, since it's in there, and maybe if I can figure it out, we'll just go ahead and leave it in and test it as is with that in there and without anything else installed, and we'll see what the heck is going on. But yeah, this is just an incredible find. I've never found anything like this in my years of collecting, where there is just so many mods. There's that, what I think is an RF mod in the back there, and so many cards. Somebody really loved this system and took great care of it. And it was literally on its way to being thrown into scrap. And thank goodness Richard kept it and saved it. And yeah, I just hate to think that this thing was actually going in the garbage. Incredible. All right, well, now that we have all the cards unplugged, it's a good time to do a test. It looks like these chips are still plugged in and everything. And the thing that I'm worried about is the character font card, alternate character generator card, whatever you want to call it, the laser card, because I don't know where that wire goes. But worst case, we can always take that board off and just plug the keyboard back directly into the motherboard. But otherwise, everything else is unplugged. And I'm going to go ahead and plug this power in now, which could produce magic smoke from a reefer cap. But let's go ahead and do it. Okay, power's in. Now, I did notice that this power switch on this was a bit janky, but let's just go ahead and go for it and see what happens. Here we go. Okay, power button is on, but obviously nothing is happening. Nothing is happening at all. Okay, well, that was an unremarkable start for this computer. I do want to at least see if I can get this going. So let me grab another Apple II power supply and just see what happens when we apply power to this thing. Okay, so I pulled out a known good power supply from an Apple IIe, and I just thought before I plug this in to test it, I want to just make sure there's no shorts. It's unlikely on these boards. They don't have a lot of tantalums and things like that, like the old IBM PC boards do. But let's just go ahead and test this out to make sure there's no shorts on the rails. And let's see, we should have ground in the back. Okay, so we've got ground back here. We can test each one of these for shorts. No shorts. Is this working? Yeah, no shorts. No shorts. That's just me. Come on, shorts. Just making sure. Yeah, okay, so no shorts on any of the rails. Just wanted to do that check before I plug this in and potentially damage a power supply. Okay, well, it is in there, but it's a little loosey-goosey, so I don't feel too comfortable with it, but let's just go ahead and do the best we can. Go ahead and plug in the power supply. Okay, and here we go. Power supply is on. Nobody's home, so maybe the other power supply was on too, and we're just not getting anything. Maybe this power supply actually is working. I'm hearing a little twing when I turn this on, but there is absolutely nothing coming out of the system. I don't think we need the language card installed. We can plug that in anyway. Nope, that's too bad. All right, I plugged the original power supply back in. Let's just test these rails and see if there's anything on the, when I say these rails, I mean from the power supply. I didn't actually test for shorts on the power supply. Let's just test for shorts on the power supply itself. That beep is nothing to worry about. It's just a capacitor charging. Yep, we've got capacitors on all of those rails. So let me turn this back on and we'll measure the actual voltage and see if we're getting good voltage out of this power supply when we turn it on. Okay, theoretically, power supply is on even though the computer's not on. Oh yeah, this power supply is working. I should have checked it first. -12, -5, there's 5, and over here we should have the remaining rail, which should be 12. There it is, 12, perfect. Actually, yeah, this power supply is working absolutely perfectly. So, power supply is working, but we have a dead Apple II with all of these boards and stuff in it, so we're going to have to do some more troubleshooting, and like I said, I think this video has been long enough just with the archaeology. I'll save this for the next video and then we'll do a repair on it. So wow, hopefully this has been cool for you, and hopefully this has made up for my lack of knowledge on that joystick port on the Apple IIe. And thanks for everybody for commenting. I'm not upset about it, by the way. Somebody reached out last time and apologized or said, oh, I hope I didn't come across badly by telling you about the joystick port. I don't mind at all, actually. This is a learning process for everybody, and I'm learning a lot about these boards, and some of these I haven't really had at my disposal, so it's going to be fun to learn a lot about these, read the old magazines and the old manuals, and hopefully get all these boards and this Apple II up and running. If you want to see more eWaste Wednesday video, I will throw a link to a whole playlist where you can watch all my eWaste discoveries. They're all amazing to me. And also, I will go ahead and link to another video you can find down here that you might enjoy if you enjoyed this one. Thanks again to all my supporters, and yeah, we'll see y'all later. Bye-bye.
End of line.